So in straw bale building there are different techniques to building with straw. There's the true load bearing or Nebraska style, which this behind us is a fine example, where there is no timber framework, no framework of any sort. Don't be fooled by the two pieces of timber you see on the walls. Those are only to hold compression. And then there's the other method, which we call infill, whereby there is a frame, which is usually timber, but it might be concrete blocks, it might be steel, and the straw is only the insulation. It's not taking any weight, it's not acting as a structural block as it does in load bearing. And then there's a whole range of different designs in between the true load bearing and the pure infill, which we call hybrids. And these days most straw buildings are hybrid buildings. They have a lot of load bearing element and some framing element. So if, for instance, you want to have a building that has a long patio door in one side facing the sun, which is a very sensible design, then for a very wide opening you need to have some sort of framework to take the weight over the opening, and then we need to have load bearing straw that fits around it. So very often you might have the whole of the south face as some sort of framework, and the north, east and west sides being load bearing. And the techniques that I'm going to describe in this course are mostly to do with load bearing techniques, which are completely translatable into infill as well. So we'll be talking about using straw as a structural block, but the things that we do to it, the dressing, the customizing, are all techniques that you will need to use when you're doing infill as well. So a building like this has got a door and two windows in it, and it's an ideal building to have as a load bearing structure, particularly if it's self-built, because it's very easy and very straightforward to put it together with a bunch of mates and having a lot of fun and a big party at the end of it. You can also build a building exactly like this and put a framework up first. What you've got then is the extra cost of the timber required to put that building up, and then you've got to fit the straw around the framework. So it makes it a little bit harder, and you've got some extra costs associated with the timber work. If you're a carpenter, you might find that is the sort of thing that you want to do. The main issue with load bearing is that you need to keep the straw dry. And what we've got here is a very simple but very effective method of keeping the straw and the building dry for a small building. So we've got a homemade frame here, like a gallows, with a long timber piece that goes across to a similar frame on the other side of the building, and an enormous heavy-duty tarpaulin. And this is a lorry tarpaulin. It's not to be confused with the sort of heavy-duty tarpaulins that rip when you show them any wind. It's a very expensive piece of kit, but it's well worth having. You can work underneath it and it keeps everything dry, so you don't have to worry during storms or inclement weather. A lot of people think that you have to build a framework building because of keeping the straw dry, but that really isn't true. We've built two-storey houses as load-bearing houses. So North Kesteven Council, for instance, worked with us to build a pair of semi-detached houses with all load-bearing, and we used the floor first and then the roof as the waterproof covering, with scaffolding all the way around the outside sheeted in to keep us protected. We've done other methods of load bearing where we put up temporary posts. This is for larger buildings, temporary posts with beams across, and built the floor and the wall plate for the first floor on top, and then we've come in and put the straw underneath, dropped the floor down, and then put the posts higher up and done exactly the same for the first floor with the roof. So There really isn't any reason now not to build load bearing. It's just a matter of getting your waterproof covering right. So you might want to have an infill building, basically a timber building with straw just acting as insulation, because you've got some really beautiful timber that you want to see as part of the design of the building. So you might have some beautiful homegrown larch or some oak that you want to show off. There's all sorts of reasons why you might want to build a timber frame first and then fill it in afterwards with straw. You've still got the problem when you've got your framework up that you've got to keep the straw dry when you put it into the wall, and you've got to keep it dry until you've got it plastered. And another feature that you very often see on straw buildings is a veranda like this one. It gives you a bit of extra outdoor space that's under cover, and it also means that you could plaster that face of the wall with clay outside instead of a more durable lime, because the rain is never going to make contact with it. We've done quite a lot of outdoor classrooms like this with an inside space for when it's colder and an outside space for doing wet work and for being able to look at nature and the environment while still being under cover and out of the rain.